Hey all, welcome. Office hours, week 5. We're halfway through. Hope you're enjoying the class. I got my stealth panelist, Nathaniel. Are you out there?
Yes, I am.
Where are you? You in Oregon or are you back in Southern California?
I'm in Southern California.
I came home early. I got from D.C., so I'm here also. Let's get into the poll questions. Poll question number 1. SBA's mandatory 1.15 debt service coverage ratio must be calculated from the financial statements, the tax returns, projections, any of the above.
Any of the above.
Let's see, this is a poll question for the audience, Nathaniel. You're not supposed to.
Oh, okay. So what do you want?
You're supposed to provide color analysis. I tee it up, okay. And then you go, well, Bob. This is where you say, well, Bob, we want the financial statements that would do that. We know tax returns are conservative. We use projections when we have a startup, so we can use any of the above. That's what you're supposed to say.
That's what I'm supposed to say.
All right.
Well, thanks for the prompt.
Everyone got that right. Very good. Very good. The takeaway is yes, you can use all three. Perhaps you should do all three in your calculations, but it's up to you on what you want to do. Poll question number 2. If you are underwriting a variable rate loan tied to prime, an anticipated rise in interest rates must be included in your cash flow analysis. True or false? Why do I ask that question, Nathaniel?
Well, because if you anticipate a rise, that you want to make sure that there's going to be adequate debt repayment ability going forward. Although,
do you do it?
I think
if you're underwriting a loan today, and we all read the same stuff that we think there's going to be a rise in interest rates, the answer is it's no. You don't have to do that, and we're split 50-50. However, there's nothing wrong with doing it. Correct, Nathaniel?
Well, no, exactly. That's what I was going to say. I was going to wait for the responses, so I don't become like I did.
So I don't yell at you again.
Okay. Well, because you want to do some kind of sensitivity analysis. If you expect the rates to rise, how will that impact the business and debt repayment ability?
The reason why I asked this question is SBA does not demand that in the SOP, but this could be one of your prudent things that you do in your credit memorandum where you address the issue. That shows that you're prudent in terms of how much of an interest rate shock. In our case study, Nathaniel, I talk about that on a $2 million real estate loan, if rates rise, I think I said 3.25%, we go from 5.25% to 8%. It's going to be a $4,000 a month shock stress to the company. Do we think this company can handle it? And the answer is yes. We may not be happy about it, but we think they can. And yeah, I would put that in the credit memorandum that you don't have to do an extensive analysis, one short paragraph where we did the stress test, and we think we're okay. You think that's prudent, Nathaniel?
Absolutely.
Poll question number 3. If you add back depreciation to cash flow, which we're all told to do, but must we also subtract the anticipated equipment purchases for the coming year to take that out of the cash flow? And Nathaniel, you and I were taught a long time ago, we always add back the depreciation, but I wasn't very clear to me if we have to add back those equipment purchases. And 60% say yeah, you got to do that. 40% say no. The answer is, Nathaniel?
No. However,
it
depends on the type of business. If it's a capital-intensive business and you look at their depreciation schedule, you're seeing that some of that equipment is going to need to be replaced. I think from a prudent underwriting standpoint, it should be considered.
And that's why in this case study, we have a machine shop, we have equipment needs. I think it's prudent to add it back in. A preview for week 6. We need to deal that when we talk about the specifics of the cash flow. So the answer is no, we don't have to do that, but prudent lenders need to address that. Need to address the credit memorandum. They may not necessarily have to put it in the numbers, but it needs to be addressed in terms of, hey, this is what the equipment needs for the company are in the coming year. Poll question number 4. Which of the following has the best positive impact on Franklin Brothers cash flow? I give you 4 choices. We want to reduce inventory turn from 30 to 20 days. Michael Franklin got a line of credit from American Express of $100,000 he can use with whatever he wants. We're going to reduce that AR turn from 70 to 40 days, and we have that $165,000 note to the old man. that we're going to subordinate. This is sort of a preview of how we need to treat the company's cash flow. And 100%, we're speaking to the choir, preaching to the choir, 100% say, Nathaniel, if we reduce that AR turn, good things are going to happen to the company's cash flow.
That's correct. However, I was going to make a comment about the outside debt.
Yes.
That the line of credit, that may not necessarily improve their operating cash flow, but it does provide a cushion going forward. And subordinating the debt from the relative, if there are not going to be any payments, obviously that's going to have more cash available for the business.
Yeah, and that's all of those scenarios are important to the company. In my particular case, Nathaniel, I went through it. Reducing that AR turn 30 days is going to be hugely beneficial to the company. So, all right. Coming up for week 5, this is what we talked about. We talked about how to calculate the cash flow. Be creative. Don't do creative writing. We did historical cash flow analysis. We talked about the projections. We talked about that shock to the company. What happens if we can reduce that AR? We like that. We talked about capacity. And we talked about Michael's personal financial statement and why we wanted that. And we have some questions about Michael's personal financial statement. Let me go to number 2, and then we'll go to number 1. Number 2. The question is, hey, Michael has an investment in an apartment building in something called GMK, but they're not affiliates by Franklin Brothers by standards. So the question is, if they're not affiliates of Franklin Brothers doesn't control those, why do I need to get all that information? The SBA says Franklin Brothers loan payments must be covered by its own cash flow, not the cash flow of the guarantors. Nathaniel, why do I care if I could prove that the cash flow of Franklin Brothers stands on its own? Why do I care about all the cash flow impact on Michael when it's not an affiliate according to SBA's definition of control?
Well, it may not be an affiliate, but it may not be self-sustaining without the business having to subsidize if it's not self-sustaining. And that's why you want to look at the global cash flow basis for something like this.
Yeah, my answer is we want to make sure Michael isn't in a position where he has to loot the company to handle his other investments from that standpoint. And in the case study we show, GMK is it's a flipping house type of deal, and that is a drain on cash, but we've proved that that's offset by his other incomes, so it tends to be a wash. It's not going to be material on the company. Nathaniel, number 1, I got a call from someone, and they said, Bob, I'm confused. If the company has, we were talking about Michael, and he's getting the $150,000 down payment from a sale of the cabin up in the mountains, why can't we just take the $150,000 out of the company's checking account and use that as the down payment?
Well, first of all, I have to determine whether or not the withdrawal of that cash from the business for equity injection is going to affect the business's needed working capital. And usually the underwriter determines that.
Yeah, and that's the takeaway, that you out there on the line, you are the one who determines, does that company need that cash in the checking account for their ongoing working capital? If they don't, if they have high balances, then I would say my advice would be make that a distribution to Michael so it goes through the normal process, and he can use that as long as you determine that the company's going to have sufficient cash flow. Remember, you are mandated to determine that there's enough cash flow in this company for the next 12 months in the SOP, and actually I said the next 18 months because you don't want to have an early default according to Herndon.
I concur. That makes absolutely
Why? Last question. Now, this also came up. Said, okay, Michael owns 20% of Jack in the Box. Why? I'm confused. Isn't that considered an affiliate of Franklin Brothers? And why don't we need those financial statements and tax returns of Jack in the Box as a 20% owner? See, this is the pause.
Yeah, no, I'm
You're thinking. You're thinking. Let me help you out.
Yes.
Franklin Brothers does, okay, we have that 20% rule. Don't get fooled by that trap. The purpose of this question is Franklin Brothers does not control the operations of that Jack in the Box.
That's the critical piece.
And
does not control.
Yeah, and then we find out, well, what's Michael's control of that, if Michael's every day in the afternoon managing it, then yeah, I would say that's control. But if he's simply a 20% passive investor and collecting a check every month, that's not control. Here's the takeaway. You get to choose if that's an affiliate or not. So I would simply ask the question, Michael, how much time do you spend there? If he's spending half his time there, yeah, I think there's some control. I mean, go ahead and elaborate on that, Nathaniel.
Well, also, you're going to need to, again, use the resources from the Jack in the Box to determine the global cash flow.
Right. And I think in this case, I don't have it in front of me, but it's a positive. I think it's a positive amount. So we're going to give Michael credit for that. We're not going to give that positive amount. We're not going to put that in the Franklin Brothers cash flow analysis because it's not an affiliate. It's not control. And again, remember, even if we did that, we cannot use the cash flow from Jack in the Box investment to do a shortfall in Franklin Brothers. Franklin Brothers has to stand on its own for the loan. Very, very critical.
Yes, it has.
Good. Week 6, collateral calculation. That's going to be fun. We do it the SBA way. I think you'll like the way that that's laid out. I went ahead and I structured the loan. So you'll see how I structured it. I'll give you a preview. We're doing it as 2 loans. We're doing the real estate loan. Then we're going to do the side loan to take care of equipment, leasehold improvements. It helps the company's cash flow, and I walk through that so you see how that impacts the cash flow. Nathaniel, you and I went over the case in terms of how we do that. And I'll tell you how we did the equipment. I chose to finance the equipment for the next 2 years, so therefore I don't have to put that equipment subtraction in the cash flow. But then I go back to the collateral, make sure we have sufficient collateral. If you choose to do the case study on your own for the final, I encourage you to do that. You can structure the loan any way you want. So just because I'm presenting an option, it's not the right option necessarily, but I wanted to give you how to do that. And then I go into the specific rules on SBA and refinance and construction. So we throw a lot of specific SBA traps into the case study next week. I think you'll like it. Short reading list. 3 pages and 4 pages from the SOP. I know I've assigned it in the past. I'm assigning it again because I want to hammer this home in terms of what the SOP says. Nathaniel, I don't think you've had a chance to really delve into the case study, but touch really briefly on construction, and then we'll go ahead and finish the call. And one of the traps that I have is, what do we do with this leasehold improvements? It's $100,000. Do we want to disperse it as construction and do the controls? Do we want to disperse it as working capital and call it that? How would you do that? It's $100,000 out of a $2.5 million deal. How do you handle that construction in your deals?
Well, if it's really not complex leasehold improvements, I would say that you could go ahead and not have it monitored.
Yeah, and that's what I argued. These guys are engineers. And even if they screw it up and they have a cost, cost overrun of 25%, it's not going to be material. So the SOP allows you, it says while we don't encourage it, and I don't think it says may not be prudent, they don't encourage it, they will allow you to do it in leasehold improvements and not monitor it. So in your write-up, you're going to be very clear. You're going to do 2 things. You're going to say, hey, we understand that we need control, but in this case it's a material. B, if they screw it, B, I don't think we're going to screw it up because they're engineers. That's assumption. C, even if they screw it up, it's not going to be material, and the cost is going to be 25%. The company can absorb that stress test.
Well, actually, I'm faced with a situation now, and it's actually a live case where a borrower has acquired a building, and they need to do leaseholding.
That's exactly what we're doing here, right?
And I'm not going to have them go through construction or builder's control because we're talking about $100,000, and they happen to be contractors. They install partitions.
Yeah. So the takeaway is you can choose as the underwriter to go ahead and require that if you want them to do that. You could choose to put it into working capital. My strategy is I would put it in leasehold improvements, disclose it all, but say, hey, this is why I'm not going to do that. And because if that $100,000 blows up, is that enough to take down the entire loan? I don't think so. And I would write that in the credit memo. We don't think it's going to take down the loan. So, anyway, I enjoyed it. Thank you all for joining us. Please keep the questions and comments coming. You're going to enjoy next week very much. And if you want to ask any questions or further elaborate on our Franklin Brothers. I love to hear that. But with that, Nathaniel, thank you for your time. Everyone have a nice weekend. Thanks a lot.